This is Stephen Wachowski from Christian Music Network, and we're here with Paul Ciupek. How are you?
I'm doing great. How about you?
Good, 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 good. So tell me about
Awesome.
yourself.
Tell you about myself.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah, yeah. Long
Well,
history. I know.
yeah, long
Wow.
history. Well, I was born in Northern California, a little town called Vallejo. It's about 35 miles north of San Francisco, and grew up there. And my parents were strong Christians, and so they had me in church from day one. And I always kind of gravitated toward the musical things, as I grew up, and I became a member of the choir and at church, and my parents got me piano lessons, and in school I played trumpet in the school band, and then I discovered the guitar and started messing around with that, and then got an electric guitar and then a bass guitar, and I've also always been banging on things, so I'm a bit of a drummer here and there, and so I just loved music my whole life, and I grew up, as I say, in the church, but this was during the 70s, and I had never heard of contemporary Christian music. I didn't know what that was. I didn't know there was such a thing. Um, and I was always, preached to that rock and roll was of the devil and
Right.
was
Yeah.
bad. It was mainly because of the lyrics, and they were singing about awful things and stuff. And so, anyway, and then I went to a public school for elementary and for middle school. But then in high school, my parents sent me to a Christian high school. And one day I was in ninth grade, and I got a ride home from an upperclassman. And in his car, he had playing some music. And he had a tape in there. And I said, "What is that?" And he said, "That's Christian music." I said, "That's Christian music?" I couldn't believe it. And it was actually, it was the Imperials, and it was an album they had out called Sail On. And
Okay.
it was the first album with Russ Taff
Right.
on it. And so I was listening to Russ Taff's vocals, and the contemporary sound that was coming out, and just thought, man, that is cool. This is a Christian group, but they sound contemporary. And as I say, I was like 14 years old. I said, "Is there more like this?" And he said, "Oh yeah, yeah." And he told me about Christian bookstores and this and that. So I immediately found a Christian bookstore in my area, went in there, and at the time, vinyl albums were still the big thing,
Right.
albums and cassettes. So they had big displays on the wall of all these albums from people like Resurrection Band, Sweet Comfort Band, um, Daniel Amos, David Meese, Don Francisco, Amy Grant, and all these people I'd never really heard of before.
Right.
So even though I grew up in the church, I wasn't exposed to contemporary Christian music. And so when I was and began listening to these different artists, I just thought, this is what I want to do. This is who I want to be. This was
Yeah.
the dream. And I soon discovered at the store they were selling this magazine called CCM, Contemporary Christian Music Magazine. And so I bought that, and each month I would get the magazine and I would cut out the pictures and I would put them on my bedroom wall. I've got Randy Stonehill and Second Chapter of Acts, and all these different artists on my wall, and that was my dream, to be able to do that. And then I started finding out that there were concerts in the area. Of course, a lot of the artists at that time in the late 70s, early 80s, a lot of them were centered in Southern California. This is
Okay.
right before the big Nashville boom,
Wow.
And so a lot of the artists were centered down in Southern Cal. And so even if they didn't tour a ton outside of the West there, they at least would come up to Northern California, to the Bay Area. And so I got to see my first really contemporary Christian concert was Randy Stonehill. And it was amazing, what he did. And he was so funny and yet so moving and touching in a spiritual way that it was just powerful. And I saw that, the word of God married to contemporary music could be a powerful thing. And
Sure.
I remember during that time, during those first 2 to 3 years there, of being able to go to every live concert I could imagine. I was every one that was coming through. I saw Petra and Randy Matthews and Sheila Walsh and Phil Kagi and Second Chapter of Acts, Resurrection Band, of course, Sweet Comfort Band, Fireworks,
Yeah.
Leslie Phillips when she had her first album come out, and just all these different groups and artists. And I just thought it was incredible. And when I was 16, my parents wanted to take me to this one church where this group called the Continental Singers was going to be. Now, by this time, I was into, some of the cooler Christian music out there. And I thought, Continental Singers, what is that? They said, it's like this traveling youth choir, and I thought, I don't know. But they kind of dragged me along to this concert at a church. As soon as I came in, I saw the drums set up, and back then, late 70s, early 80s, drums in a church were kind of a rare thing.
Right.
There weren't a lot of churches that had worship teams, let alone drums set up in the church. But there was the drums and there was electric guitar and bass, along with all these brass instruments and such. So anyway, I loved the concert, thought it was great, even though it was a choir vibe, about 20, 25 singers. They still had the band going, and they mixed a lot of the contemporary Christian music that I'd been listening to, was part of their program. So I ended up auditioning for that group, and I made it. So in the summers of 80 and 81, I toured with the Continental Singers and Orchestra.
Wow.
And yeah, and in 1980, I remember there were 44 of us on tour, and I was the youngest one. They took people ages 16 to 25, and I was the youngest guy on tour. And so it was a real growing up experience. The first year, it was all over the United States that we did concerts. And then the following year in 81, I was on a tour with Continentals that played in Northern Europe and Scandinavia countries. So I got to do concerts when I was 17 years old in Norway and Finland and Sweden and what at the time was West Germany and Denmark. And one of the most amazing things about that time, I was so young, but and I grew up in a Baptist church, and but on this tour there were people from all kinds of different denominations.
Sure.
And there were Presbyterians and Methodists and non-denominational, and we had some Catholics on tour, and so. But the deal was, we were, despite our denominational differences, we were all able to work together to put this program together and present it every night, and do this ministry and this music together, and I thought, man, that's amazing. So it taught me a lot about kind of cooperation within the body of Christ, and that was a valuable thing to see and be a part of and to learn. And so just amazing things happened during my teenage years, and with music and with the Continentals and everything. When I was 18, I ended up in Vallejo, still in California. I ended up forming a Christian rock band, kind of a Christian metal band called Front Runner.
Okay.
And we were together about maybe a year and a half. It was kind of short lived, but
Okay.
we recorded a 45. We recorded a single, and so that was my first experience in a recording studio. Was when I was 18 years old, and after Frontrunner broke up, I ended up moving to Austin, Texas, because one of my friends, actually a bass player in the Continentals. By the way, I sang with Continental singers. I wasn't part of the band.
Okay.
I in the choir. I was a singer, and one of the cool things was, going back to that, is that the second year I was with Continentals, we did the song by the Imperials called "Trumpet of Jesus,"
Right.
and that's one of the ones that Russ Taff sings lead on, and I got to do the solo part in that
Wow.
song. So for 75 nights in a row, you know, I got to get out there and do my Russ Taff impersonation,
Cool.
and that was a lot of fun. It was amazing. And so anyway, so uh, our bass player on both tours in 80 and 81, his name was Maury Milliken. He lived in Austin, Texas. He was going to University of Texas there, and he said, "Paul, man, you ought to come to Austin." He says, "I'm in this band, this Christian rock band called Pavilion, and you ought to come and sing with us," and blah blah blah. And so, with my parents' blessing, I ended up moving to Austin, and from there, I was part of kind of a local Christian rock or Christian music scene, that we had at the time. This was the 80s. And so a lot of stuff was happening, and a lot of rock, a lot of new wave, metal, glam metal, that punk, that type of stuff.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to be in any type of music or any kind of band I could, and was just having a lot of fun during that time. And in 1985, uh, some friends of mine and we decided to go up to Cornerstone Festival in Illinois. That was the festival that Resurrection Band and Jesus People USA put on. And actually, their first year they ever did it was 84. So this was the second year, 85. We drove up from Austin. We weren't a band or anything, just going up to have fun and enjoy the Christian music. And on the way up there, we stopped in St. Louis at a Pizza Hut, and they were selling these little promotional wraparound shades, these sunglasses. And
Sure.
on one side of the sunglasses, they had the Pizza Hut logo. On the other side, they had a logo of a local rock station, and the mascot of this station was a pig.
Oh yeah.
It was a tough looking pig. It had a guitar slung over its shoulder and had kind of a tough look on its face and a muscle shirt on, kind of a muscular pig. And my friend, who was Kerry Womack, he said, "Man, that's One Bad Pig." And I said, "One Bad Pig? That sounds like a name of a punk band."
Yeah. Yeah.
And we laughed
Oh.
about that. Thought that was funny. One Bad Pig. But then, because we were on this road trip up to this festival and back, that the One Bad Pig thing kind of stuck. It became kind of an inside joke,
Sure.
throughout the festival. We were just saying the words "One Bad Pig" all the time, and making up fake album title names and things like that, just as a joke. But at Cornerstone, I got to see the choir, which at the time was still called Youth Choir.
Right.
And Daniel Amos and the 77s and Charlie Peacock and Vector,
Yep.
common bond. And then some of the metal groups like Philadelphia and Saint and Messiah Prophet,
Yeah.
of course, Res Band, and I mean, it was just an incredible time. And one of the cool things about Cornerstone was that, I mean, we were just fans. We were trying to get our own thing happening musically, but mostly we were just fans of the music. And the artists were so accessible there.
Yes.
I mean, they were, you could talk to them and just hang out with them and eat with them and whatever. And it was just amazing, to get to spend that much time with people that you had their records and their tapes. So anyway, it was a powerful time. So when we got back home that summer to Austin, a local organization was planning the first ever what they called Labor Day Christian Music Festival. This is still in 85.
Okay.
And I put together a band called the Paul Ciupek Band.
Okay.
And we played there. That was our first gig. And also my friend Carrie, who was on the trip to Cornerstone, and I and a couple other guys, we got together and said, wouldn't it be hilarious if we got a little punk band together and just played all these really fast songs and stuff, maybe an Undercover song and an Altar Boys song, and get up there and call ourselves One Bad Pig? Wouldn't that be funny? Wouldn't that be hilarious? We said, yeah, let's do it.
Mhm.
And so we did. We called ourselves One Bad Pig, and we were on the bill of the festival. It was all local bands. There was no
Okay.
name bands on there. And so when our turn came, we got out there and we smashed a guitar and we played about 5 songs really fast. And but our lead singer Carrie, who also started going by the name Kosher, he was actually, even though he was in his early 20s, he was pastoring a small church in Austin.
Wow.
Yeah, because he was going to seminary at the time, and this small church, mostly of elderly people, they needed a pastor, and he was stepping in and preaching at this church every Sunday. So he loved to preach, and also we had kind of a ministry going in town where we would hang out at clubs like down on 6th Street in Austin, and we'd hang out outside the clubs and we'd talk to the kids when they'd come out. We'd talk to them about Jesus, kind of befriend them and kind of talk to them about spiritual things and witness to them. So he had a real heart for doing that and a heart for these kids. And so during our little set at the Labor Day Music Festival, he preached, but he did it in kind of a punk style, kind of a street preaching style,
Sure. Cool.
real aggressive and real confident.
Yes.
And that was a big part of our set, what we did. It was real short. The whole thing was probably 15 minutes.
Right.
And so after the festival, people, because we were a novelty, we really stood out because it was punk and it was weird and the name was weird and it was just different. And every time you have something different, it has a chance of really standing out.
Sure.
The novelty more than anything. And so, but there was one person afterwards who said, man, he said, what you guys did was anointed. It was really powerful. And we said, wow, anointed? We're like, okay. And so, we began to rethink it a little bit. And so our prayer was just, God, if you want to use this One Bad Pig thing, just, use it however you want to, and not thinking that there may be a future with it or anything. We didn't know.
Sure.
I mean, my legitimate Christian band was the Paul Ciupek Band.
Mm-hmm.
It was my band, and we were doing stuff that sounded a lot like, Tears for Fears,
Sure.
or Duran Duran, or stuff like that. Very 80s sounding, but with a powerful Christian message. but I was the lead singer of that band. And our singer in the Pig, I was the guitarist in the Pig, Kerry, he wasn't really a singer. He was
Mm,
more of a screamer,
right.
But with that type of music, that was fine. That was what was
Right.
called for. And so we continued on. I continued on with the Paul Ciupek band and with One Bad Pig. And actually, our second gig was opening for Undercover when they came through Austin.
Cool.
Undercover came through tour that year in the fall of '85, came through Austin, and we had talked to the promoter, about us. I think the promoter may have seen us, at that festival, and he had us open up for him because stylistically we were the closest thing, to what they were doing. And so that was very cool. And we ended up recording a little demo tape and sending it to Cornerstone Festival because at the time Cornerstone wanted all these radical bands to play.
Sure.
And there were only so many of them. So they would have signed bands and they would sometimes have unsigned bands play. They'd still give them a platform. So we just sent it in thinking, well, what do we got to lose? And Cornerstone Festival actually booked us, One Bad Pig, to play in the summer of 1986.
Wow.
Yeah. So we quickly record. So we'd have something to sell there. We recorded a 6-song EP. And it was at the time, it was only available on vinyl.
Okay.
We pressed up some copies on vinyl, just 6 songs. They were really fast songs. So the whole thing, wasn't very long, but the EP ended up having what turned out to be one of our signature songs. At the time, the song was called Six. Later, when we did the Smash album in '89, the title of it was changed to Isaiah 6.
Okay.
But the powerful, powerful song, paraphrasing Isaiah and the coal to his lips and him saying, "Here I am, send me."
Right.
And it became one of and now, anytime we do a gig, we have to do that song because it's, it's one of our standout tunes. But it was on the original EP way back in '86. And we titled that EP A Christian Band, BANNED.
Right.
Like not because there were some coffee houses and churches in the area that wouldn't let us play there because the music and the style and the way we dressed was just too radical.
Sure.
So like we were banned from those places.
Okay.
But yet the punk clubs where we had been ministering to kids outside, we started getting booked on the bill of some of those clubs with other secular punk bands.
Mm-hmm.
We were playing in these clubs, but there were some of the clubs that didn't want us to play because our message was too upfront about Jesus and about God. And, they were offended by our message, And so we felt like we were banned from some of those places too. So that's
Sure.
where the name came from, A Christian Band. And so anyway, we got to play at Cornerstone in 1986, and it was just amazing. It was incredible. To then, the year before, as I say, we were there just as fans. Now we were there as artists. Now, of
Right.
course, we're still fans. We're fans of all the groups, but
Sure.
they're coming to us and talking to us as if we were their peers.
Wow.
As if we were, fellow artists with them, And of course, in a way we were. I mean, we were on the bill. We played one of the late night showcases, and it was just an incredible, incredible time. It was powerful spiritually. It was powerful, of course, musically, and just getting together with that many people that had a common mindset. When you're into Christian music and when you're into radical Christian music, especially at that time, you could feel really alone sometimes. There was no internet. There were no podcasts. There was
Right. Yeah.
most local Christian radio stations played Amy Grant and Sandy Patty,
Yeah.
and Michael W. Smith, and but they wouldn't play Res Band or Vector. They
Right.
wouldn't play some of the bands you knew were very cool.
Sure.
And so to be at a festival, to be at a place where there were thousands of people that understood your love for the 77s, and
Sure.
and understood, our excitement for hearing anything new and any rumors about different bands in different places. It was just an amazing time, and a powerful way to fellowship. So so the Pig and the Paul Ciupek band, which mostly the Paul Ciupek band played around Austin, in some clubs and in some coffee houses and churches mainly, and but the Pig, we just kind of as I say, played and grew for a few years there. And then in 1989, or it may have been in late 88, maybe, I think it was late 1988, there was a Christian tour coming through Austin. It was Whiteheart.
Okay.
And it was their emergency broadcast tour. And so they were coming through on that tour, and their opening act was this guy and his guitar. Nobody had really heard of him before, but his name was Stephen Curtis Chapman.
Okay. Yeah.
It
Yeah.
was his first little tour, opening for Whiteheart. And so we went to the Whiteheart show, and at the time there was a guy with Whiteheart named Billy Smiley, and he had produced some artists. He had produced records for Jeff Moore and the Distance and Margaret Becker. And so we thought, oh, this guy is a producer, and maybe we'll get to meet him, and maybe we'll give him a tape,
Sure.
or something, And so we gave him a tape of One Bad Pig and a tape of the Paul Ciupek band, also my band. And so anyway, but kind of to our surprise, he got in contact with us after the concert. And he said, hey, this One Bad Pig thing, he said, there's something here. He said, I hear something here. And I'd like to take you guys out to eat and just talk with you for a bit, if that's okay. We were like, okay, sure. So we went out to dinner with Billy Smiley.
Wow.
And he basically said, I want to produce a rock band. He said, I'm kind of looking more for the Christian Bon Jovi, he said, which we were definitely not that.
No, definitely
not. But he said, but I listened to y'all's thing, and he said the intensity of it and the message and just the power behind it, And also he said it made him laugh too, which we found out later on was kind of half the battle with our audiences. If we could make people laugh, we thought we won them over a little bit,
Okay.
So the stuff we did on stage started becoming sillier and sillier,
Sure.
But so Billy invited us. He said, if you want to, I'd love to have you guys come up to Nashville. And he said, I can get us into a studio there on spec, meaning a trial run with the studio. Didn't cost any money, but he had a relationship with the studio where he could bring a band in for a day or two, record something really quick, and then he could shop it around. And then if we ever did get signed and there wasn't any money for production, he could pay back that studio, So it's like taking a chance, Sure. So we decided, to go ahead and go for this, And so I think it was early 89 that we went up to Nashville for a weekend. recorded, several songs. I think it was like 7. I think it was 7 songs recorded at Warner Brothers Studios in Nashville. We thought we'd hit the big time,
Yeah, definitely.
So we weren't signed or anything, but this was Billy just doing a demo on us, which he hoped would turn into the album,
Sure.
And so he recorded us there, and then we went back home, and then he brought in some of his Whiteheart buddies, like what's his name? Craig McHugh was the drummer at the time, and Gordon Kennedy was the guitar player. Rick Florian was the singer. He had all them come in and kind of enhance some of what we did, where it wasn't strong enough, or he needed this wild guitar lead or something. He had them come and kind of fill in some stuff, So he made us sound bigger and more professional than we actually were,
Awesome.
He was using his studio knowledge, he was crafting an album, And so I remember listening to that tape, when he sent it to us, and it's going, oh my gosh, is that us? Like, weird. It sounded, so huge, So anyway, and so Billy, had relationships and knew many of the people in the industry and at the labels. And he shopped this One Bad Pig demo that he had done to every label in town, Sparrow and Murr and Benson, and because he was going for the biggies first,
Sure.
And when they all passed, no surprise, he pushed it to, there was a label in California, Southern Cal, called Frontline.
Yeah.
Frontline had the Altar Boys and Krumbacher, just very cool alternative Christian bands.
Right. Yeah.
And we loved Frontline, of course. We loved that. So we thought, oh yes, Frontline, we're perfect for that. Perfect. And they passed on us.
Really? Wow.
They said no. They didn't.
Wow.
They didn't. One Bad Pig. No. They thought, no, this doesn't work for us. Okay.
Okay.
So Billy had gotten the door closed, everywhere he went. And so what ended up happening is there was a Christian label in Pennsylvania, I believe, called Refuge.
Yes.
And they had at the time a division called Pure Metal, which had White Cross and Bride and Leviticus, Rosanna's Raiders, all these different groups, Tempest, and so the gentleman, Ray Nenow, I believe was his name, was the president of Refuge, and Billy actually was college roommates with this guy at one time. So he had a personal relationship with the president of Refuge. Okay. Billy called the guy up, said, look, I've got this band. I'm producing them. I've done 7 songs on them. We just need about 4 or 5 more tunes. It's going to be cheap. It's going to be easy. I know you guys could package this up and sell it. I know it'll work. I believe in these guys. Do me a favor as an old college buddy and sign these guys and, let's put out this record. And so without hearing the tape, Ray Nenow said, okay, Billy, I trust you. And because we're friends, I'll do it. That's how we got signed to Refuge Records.
Wow.
And we went into the studio again, went up to Nashville into a different studio and recorded 5 more songs, including Smash the Guitar and Looney Tune. Yeah. Right. And and so that became the Smash album. And that came out in 1989 on Refuge, on Pure Metal.
Sure.
And so that was an amazing thing, because even though they were a small label, they had distribution, like any other label.
Sure.
It's just that in most Christian record stores, they might see a new release by Refuge or Pure Metal and maybe order 4 or 5 of them to have in their store. Whereas something coming out on Word or Bird, they'd order 30 or 40 of those. So, so we were all across the country in different Christian bookstores mainly. And Refuge had some worldwide reach also. They had some distribution in Europe, in England, Germany, in South Africa, in South America. They had little pockets, of Christian distribution.
Wow.
And so we began getting letters from not only the people in the States, around the States, that had discovered the album, but we got a letter from South Africa and from Brazil and from Germany and from England. And, it's just like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. And in the summer of '89, we played at Cornerstone, this time with an actual legitimate, album. We were a signed artist, played there for the first time
Oh,
as a signed artist. And we had all these T-shirts and everything, a big merchandise table, and selling our stuff. And but also that summer, there was a festival in England um, called Greenbelt
yeah.
Festival.
Yep.
And it was hard to describe this festival. They booked mostly Christian artists, but they had a different vibe over there, and they didn't want really there to be a lot of upfront preaching about Jesus. They wanted to let the music do the talking, kind of
Sure.
thing. And it was more of that type of vibe of the festival. And a lot of the seminars they would have during the day were mostly debates
Okay.
about creationism or about abortion or about homosexuality or that. And they would let people on each side of the debate just kind of go at it,
Interesting.
and things like that. And so it was like, but we weren't scheduled to play there. But one of our label mates, White Cross, was.
Yeah.
And uh, Refuge had a distribution arm there in England. I believe they were called Kingsway, and they distributed all of Refuge's product there. And so Kingsway had a stage there that they were putting on some of their artists from different labels they distributed. And so White Cross was going to be the representative from Refuge and from America. And a week before their gig, White Cross had to pull out for some reason. I don't remember why, but they had to cancel. And the label Refuge got a hold of us and said, I know it's short notice, but would you guys like to take White Cross's place in England a week from now and play a set at Greenbelt Festival? And this was a shock, None of us had passports.
Right. Yeah, definitely.
And so it was like, how are we going to do that? This is when I learned, of course, this was back then before 9/11 and all like that. This was in '89. And I learned a little about our passport system. And if you pay enough money, you can get a passport turned around in a day or two. And Refuge knew this, and so they had us all go to a passport place, get our pictures taken, and get all the paperwork signed up. And then Refuge dumped the money into the system. And within 2 days, we had our passports, we had our plane tickets, and we were on our way to Greenbelt Festival. And wow, what what an amazing time we had there. And of course, we were told, that, hey, just play the music, don't preach from the stage, this and that. And so we went in to do our set, and tons of kids there, tons of kids wanted to hear some radical Christian music, and but the thing was, with One Bad Pig, we were always, our motto was kind of 100% ministry and 100% mayhem. We were going to be nutty and wild and weird and rocking on stage and put on an incredible show. We were going to go 100% with the show, but also 100% with the gospel, and with our upfront ministry. And there was going to be ministry time, in the set. In a way, we kind of patterned our ministry after Res Band.
Sure.
We had seen Res Band many times, and at that time, Glenn, the lead singer, would always preach at the end of the set of a Res Band concert. He'd always break it down and preach, and they'd have an altar call, And so we patterned our ministry kind of after that. We were very strong on the preaching aspect. And so we kind of, being the punk band that we ignored the rules. And Carrie, our lead singer, halfway through the set, started laying out the gospel of Jesus Christ,
Wow.
And man, it was powerful. And so we finished the set, and afterwards we got to meet a ton of the kids, and sign autographs and all that, shake hands. And all of them just commented on the ministry. They said, we've never heard anything like that before.
Wow.
They said, man, the way you guys were just talking about Jesus. This was at Greenbelt Festival,
Right. Yes.
But it stood out like crazy again, and so, and one of the kind of funny, memorable things about that day was that the artists, after they would play a set, they would go to a certain tent where people would meet them for autographs. They'd be at a table. The artists would be at a table, and people would line up, and they'd pass by, and they would get things signed by the artist. Right. So we went to this artist signing tent after our set, and the people from the festival were kind of leading us over there, to sit down at these tables. And there was an artist in there signing autographs, and he'd been there for a while. And it was Larry Norman.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And so that was incredible, because our lead singer, we were all fans of Larry, of course. And really, really respected who he was, and what he did, and kind of his place in Christian music, and in a pioneer, of course, in Christian rock. And our lead singer, Carrie, had all of Larry's albums, and just loved Larry Norman. And the organizers of the festival were talking to Larry and basically telling him, we're sorry, Mr. Norman, you're going to have to move now, because One Bad Pig is coming in to sign autographs. And we were like, oh my gosh, they're kicking Larry Norman out so that we
oh no,
sign for these kids. And we felt so bad. We're like, oh no. So, but we got to talk to Larry about it. He just laughed. He thought it was hilarious, And of course, he loved the name of our band and what we were doing and everything.
Sure.
But so we got to meet all these British kids, and they all used the same word to describe us. All of them used this word at the time called brilliant.
Right. Exactly.
In their English accent.
Right.
Oh, it was brilliant. We loved it. Yeah, it was brilliant. They kept saying the word brilliant over and over. And they also, one thing that was interesting, they told us that they loved our accents. We didn't know we had accents, but, in Britain, apparently we did have accents. So they loved that. So anyway, that was just an amazing, amazing time. And to think a week earlier, we didn't know we were going to be going to England, and playing at a festival there, So that was crazy. And so let me backtrack a little bit. I know that uh, a lot of people always ask, what does the name mean, One Bad Pig? How did you get that name? And so it really was only seeing that picture of a pig at
Sure.
that Pizza Hut and Carrie saying that's One Bad Pig. I said, sounds like a name of a punk band. And it was just an inside running joke. So it didn't really mean anything spiritual. Now we ended up writing a song called Looney Tune on the Smash album,
Mhm.
and Carrie said, uh, the chorus of it was "One bad pig, our claim to fame. One bad pig, what a stupid name. One bad pig. God won't take ham. One bad pig, Christ is the lamb." It was just silly, just silly, silly lyrics. But basically, and there's also another lyric in there where Carrie says, "You can call me kosher because Jesus made me clean."
Mm,
So we did take kind of the pig imagery and how it was an unclean animal,
sure.
but that God was using something that was, thought to be unusable, maybe. So if you have to put a spiritual twist on the name, maybe that's it. But basically, it was just a joke and just a funny sounding name. So it's not a super spiritual name, but it's stuck. And as silly as it is, we
Sure.
we keep going with that. So in kind of the history of the pig there, we were with Refuge / Pure Metal Records, and then after our album came out, um, we had gotten a letter from Ray Nenow, the president of Refuge, and he'd sent out letters to all his bands saying that the label was experiencing some financial difficulties,
Mm,
and if anybody was owed royalties, that they might be late in coming, or maybe we could work something else out or something like that. And then there was some language in there about, if you feel like God is moving you on or whatever and stuff, then we understand, blah blah blah. And so we thought, what is this letter? What is the deal? Are they closing up shop?
sure.
Are they are we gonna do another record? Because we signed a standard record deal with them, which at the time was 7 albums.
Wow.
Now, the way record deals worked was, yes, we were signed for a 7 album deal, but in a sense, it's only a 1 album deal. In other words, the label can drop us at any time.
Mm,
They can say, we're done, that's it. But we can't go anytime.
yes, yes, yes.
If we were selling and if we were popular and they wanted to do another record with us, we would have to do it, even up to 7 albums.
Mm,
And so, yeah. So anytime an artist says they've signed a 7 album deal, really they've only signed a 1 album deal.
oh, yes.
but but but
Good to
but
know.
as far as what their decision is in it.
Sure.
But anyway, but we took this letter and it was kind of hard to understand. And so we had a friend of ours in Austin, a Christian guy who was a lawyer, and we had him look at the letter and say, what does this mean? Can we be released from our contract? And because at the time, the band was starting to develop some real buzz, in the Christian music industry.
Right.
And we had some people at other labels that, now that the Smash album came out and they saw the image of the band and they heard the songs and they saw us play live, they kind of got it a little more than when Billy just had the little demo tape he was shopping around. Now they kind of got what we were, where we were coming from, you know, and so there were people in other labels that were kind of interested in us. So we thought, if we can get out of this deal with Refuge, maybe we can sign with one of these bigger labels.
Sure.
In fact, at Cornerstone Festival, a guy who at the time was working for Myrrh Records, and he's a radio promoter guy named Chris Hauser. And he's, even today, he still does radio promotion. He lives in Nashville, does Christian radio promotion, you know. But he worked at Myrrh at the time, and he loved our band. He loved the Pig. And so he videotaped our unbeknownst to us, he taped our Cornerstone appearance in '89. And he was showing it to people at the label, at Myrrh. And there was another guy at Myrrh, an A&R guy named Mark Maxwell. And he loved the band also. And so they had talked to us a little bit and said, hey, guys, if you ever, are out of your deal or you're ever looking to work with somebody else, man, we'd love to work with you. So we knew that there was some interest out there. And so our lawyer told us he thought it meant that we could get out of our deal. And so we had him draft up a little letter that said, hey, we feel like God is moving us on and we're taking you up on your offer and we'd love to be out of our deal, please, And that's when Refuge came back and said, not so fast,
Right.
Not exactly what we meant, And so we were far enough along with Myrrh at the time that that Myrrh said, look, we usually offer a publishing advance to our artists. And said it would be $10,000. Said, what if we gave the publishing advance to Refuge as kind of a way for them to release you,
Sure.
and then you'd be with us. So we thought about it, prayed about it, talked to the lawyer, hashed it out between us. Getting stuff done within our band was never easy because we were a democratic band.
Right.
Meaning everybody had a say, which in hindsight is an awful way to run a band.
Sure.
Because nothing ever gets done. And every decision is endlessly argued about. And it's just, man, it's just like, pulling teeth sometimes. But anyway, so a deal was worked out. And I think the check was made right from Myrrh Records to Refuge to get us out of the deal. And I think Refuge even had a couple what they call percentage points of our next couple of albums on Myrrh.
Okay.
Where, for every album that sold, they made a little money.
Okay, good.
Yeah, for letting us go. So we signed a deal with Myrrh Records, One Bad Pig. Myrrh Records, the home of Amy Grant, Randy Stonehill, Petra, and all kinds of reputable artists. Phil Keaggy had been on there. It was crazy. We couldn't believe it. This was a legitimate, big-time Christian label,
Sure.
We couldn't believe it. And so we stayed with Billy Smiley as our producer. We went up to Nashville and recorded our second album, which was called Swine Flu, FLEW, Swine Flu. And we ended up having several special guests on the album. Dan Huff, who was an incredible electric guitar player, and he had been originally with Whiteheart early on, and was with a band that had a lot of MTV play at the time called Giant. And he came in and did a solo. Phil Keaggy is on the album. He does a solo. And we decided to do a version of Petra's song called Judas Kiss.
Right.
Now their version is real bluesy and real slow and plodding. Sure. and our version was
Right, yes.
song, but just sped up, a radically thrashy song, and Billy, when he heard us do it, he said, "Hey, I wonder if I can get Bob Hartman, Petra's guitarist and the guy who wrote the song, wonder if we can get Bob to come in and play on this." And we thought, wow, really? Bob Hartman of Petra, really? Come in and play? Okay. And he did. He convinced Bob to come in. And he didn't play the song for him ahead of time. He just had him come in as a favor, come into the studio and bring his stuff. So Bob comes in and he's got this rack mounted guitar gear with a strobe, tuner and everything. And he's tuning up, and all these red lights are flashing and lining up and stuff. And he's tuning up his guitar. And with the Pig, we were a punk band. We didn't have any high-tech equipment,
right,
on stage or anything. And so, we're in this studio and we had recorded the basic track without the guitar solo on it. We'd recorded the basic thing. And so Billy said, let me play you their track, and you just kind of try to play along a little bit, get a feel for what they're doing, So the track is playing and Bob Hartman is listening and he's trying a few licks and stuff. And then he looks at his guitar weird and he stops the track and he says, "Billy, what tuning are they using? How are they tuned up? What did they use?" Billy said, "Tuning? This is One Bad Pig. They don't have any tuners, They tune to themselves." Which was the case. All we had was guitar and bass.
Sure.
And I just kind of tuned the guitar up to itself, not to a tuner,
right.
Where I was getting the actual what an E was and what an A was.
Sure.
I tuned up to myself, and then the bass player tuned to me.
Uh-huh.
And so we're in tune with each other, and that's all we needed. And
That's
so
funny.
so fun. Billy say, "Bob, this is One Bad Pig. They don't use tuners." And Bob couldn't believe it. He was like, "What? They don't tune?" So they had to play the track, and Bob had to tune while the track was playing, tune to the track, tune his guitar up to it, where it was. And so, but obviously he did an amazing job, on that album. And so anyway, we did the Swine Flu record. We played at Cornerstone Festival, that summer, and we were starting to get invited to other festivals. And I know we played at Sunshine Festival. We played at Kingdom Bound. We played at Creation Festival.
Yes. Yeah, I think I saw you guys there.
Okay, yeah. And several others that I can't remember the names of, And the funny thing is all during this time, One Bad Pig, we were never full time with Pig. That we could never make enough money doing concerts or going out touring to provide for ourselves or our families or whatever. We were never full time with it. It was always just weekend gigs, basically.
Sure.
We would get booked. We had a booking guy, and he'd say, "Yeah, I've got you in, Chicago this weekend." And so we would sign up to do that gig, and then we would, on Friday after work, we would drive up all night long and all day Saturday, and then play the gig Saturday in Chicago or wherever, get back in the van, drive all night, drive all day Sunday, and be back to work Monday morning.
Wow.
And we were based out of Austin, Texas. So, we played in Florida, we played in Maryland, Indiana, just Colorado.
Wow.
And we only did one California trip. Kind of regret that we didn't get out there more, but we played a couple of concerts. One was a concert with the band Deliverance in Fallbrook, California. And then the next night was New Year's Eve. It was 1989 going into 90. It was New Year's Eve at Knott's Berry Farm in Anaheim, California. They were having a Christian music night.
Cool.
And I remember, I think Randy Stonehill was there that night, and Bash in the Code,
Right.
and Adam Again.
Right.
And there were some other artists, but One Bad Pig was on the bill.
Cool.
And we were scheduled to do 3 sets, but after 2 sets, they shut us down and they said, you know what, we can't, because there were too many people coming and they were kind of moshing and slam dancing.
Right. Yeah.
A lot
Yeah.
of people did with us. And
Sure.
at the time, we wanted to break down the barriers between us and the audience.
Mhm.
That was kind of our deal. It was like, hey, we're just like you. We're all in this together. So at one point, we would, so our Carrie, our lead singer, would always go into the audience. You would go in there and sing and thrash around with people.
Sure.
And at one point during our set, we said, hey, if you know the lyrics to this next song, get up here and sing it with us, And we start playing, and people would just come up on the stage, a few at first, kind of trying it to see if we were serious, and they get up to one of the background vocal mics, and start singing, and me and the bass player would just back away, and then the whole stage would be covered with kids.
Wow.
And they're all chanting and saying, and it looked like a riot was going on. It was a holy riot, but it was chaos.
Awesome.
We thought, this is great. We just thought it was awesome, and the kids loved it. They thought it was wonderful. But the Knott's Berry Farm people did not love it.
Right.
And they thought when we smashed a guitar, they thought we were encouraging other people to smash things, and we were like, no, we're not telling them, because they thought people were going to tear up the park or something.
Yeah.
And they just, and so after 2 sets, they shut us down. They would not let us do the 3rd set.
Wow.
So basically, we got banned at Knott's Berry Farm.
Oh boy.
Yeah. And another place we got banned at, and it was we were doing a showcase after swine flu came out in 1990 at GMA week, as Gospel Music Association week in Nashville.
Right. Yeah.
And they have all kinds of bands playing there in the evenings at different clubs and venues. So Murr had a showcase at a place called the Ace of Clubs.
Yeah.
And they had different artists playing that night, and One Bad Pig was one of them. We played that night, and as we're wont to do at the end of the set, we smashed a guitar.
Right.
And the guitar ended up chipping the stage. It was a wood stage.
Boy.
It ended up putting a little chip in it. And so the Ace of Clubs was upset, and they talked to Murr Records, who sponsored the evening, and said, what are you guys going to do about this? And so Murr ended up paying for them to redo the stage.
Wow. Oh no.
And we were banned from the Ace of Clubs in Nashville. Now, Murr actually loved this, because then the next month in CCM magazine, under the news section, it was like, One Bad Pig did a concert at Ace of Clubs during GMA week, and they busted the stage, smashing a guitar. And so they are banned from the Ace of Clubs. Murr thought that was hilarious, I mean, they had so much money that that didn't bother them at all, paying several $100s to fix the stage. That was the publicity and the joke, just the fun on it was worth it to them. They thought it was hilarious.
That's cool.
And so, and one of the neat things at the time when we got signed to Murr, I got to talk to the marketing department there at because they were wondering about how to market the swine flu record, what ads to take out in magazines, or this and that, or what to do. And I said, I've been reading CCM magazine since I was 14. I said, and anytime someone would be in CCM magazine, I thought it was important. I thought it was just great. You know, it was amazing. So I said, is there any way that we can do a 2-page color ad for the album for One Bad Pig in CCM magazine, a double page ad, just massive, you know? And they said, yeah, no problem, let's do it. And so they did. And so when the swine flu album came out, there is this huge 2-page ad in CCM magazine, and I was in it, of course. There's my picture, you know, and that was a real childhood dream come true, basically. You know, as silly as that was just like amazing, you know. But it had an effect not only on fans of Christian music who read the magazine, but a lot of people that read the magazine were industry people. They were promoters.
Sure.
They were the other record companies in town. They were the studios and, you know, stuff like that. And so that gave us a lot of credibility and a lot of open doors with some of the gatekeepers in Christian music. And because we were on Myrrh, we got nominated for a couple of Dove Awards that year. Believe it or not, they used to have a metal category in the Dove Awards.
Wow.
Metal Song of the Year and Metal Album of the Year. Now, we didn't win because Myrrh had also signed, just a little bit before they signed us, they signed a band called Holy Soldier.
Right.
And they were, you know, going to be kind of their answer to Striper or Bon Jovi or whatever, you know, this kind of glam, mainstream, melodic metal, you know, rock. And so Myrrh put, you know, obviously most of their votes behind Holy Soldier, and they won the album of the year and the song of the year. But we got to go to the Dove Awards and sit behind Sandy Patty. And, you know, it was hilarious. You know, it was great. We loved it, you know, because as I say, we were still big Christian music fans, you know. We just loved Christian music and everything about it. And so to get to go up to Nashville and hang out with these other artists and stuff, it was just incredible, you know. So then probably the high point of our career, and the number 2 question I get asked as a member of One Bad Pig. Number 1 is, how did you get the name? And number 2 is, you know, what was it like to work with Johnny Cash?
Right. Yes.
And this was something that just totally came out of left field. You know, we were doing demos for our next album, which was called I Scream Sunday.
Right.
And so we're coming up with songs for that and we're in Austin, we're sending our A&R guy, Mark Maxwell, up in Nashville, sending him little tapes of the song ideas we're coming up with. And he talked to us and said, hey guys, he said, I want you guys to listen to a song by Johnny Cash called Man in Black. It's his signature song, you know. He says the lyrics are really good, and see if you guys can do something with that, kind of rock it out or something, you know. We're like, okay, we'll check it out. So we listened to the song, and sure enough, yeah, the lyrics were pretty cool, you know. And we were like, wow, yeah, that's a cool song. We might be able to do something with that. He said, oh yeah, by the way, he said, I bet we have a chance of getting Johnny to come in and sing it with you.
Wow.
And we were like, no, that's never gonna happen. You know, we thought, come on, you know, whatever, you know. So anyway, but he was convinced, but Mark Maxwell was convinced. He thought, I really think this could happen, you know. And so he began a campaign of calls and letter writing to Johnny's people. It was called House of Cash. It was like his management company, and just outside of Nashville. And so, and Mark sent them our CDs. He sent them our pictures and our bios and our testimonies and our write-ups we'd had in magazines and things, and just tell them how, hey, this is a gospel group, and yeah, they're radical, but Johnny, we know in his past he's really liked rock and roll and radical things, and we just think, and he's also, you know, a Christian, a believer, and he had been on Billy Graham crusades before, and he had even written, Johnny had written a book called The Man in White, and it was about the Apostle Paul, and it was a bestseller in the late 70s or whatever. And so anyway, so Mark was like playing on all these things, you know, with Johnny, and how amazing this would be to have Johnny sing on this song. And so, and there was some correspondence back and forth, some interest, but never any definitive word, you know, that yes, Johnny will do this. They never got that word. And so it was like, okay, so the time was coming up for us to go up to Nashville for a couple of weeks to record this album. So we get up to Nashville and we start recording the record. And it's funny, one of the songs on Ice Cream Sunday is called You're a Pagan.
Yeah.
And it's a very fast song, you know, just really, really fast and screaming and wild. And one time, and so we're working with Billy Smiley again, and we're in this studio recording, and we're working on the mix. I think we're mixing You're a Pagan. And who walks in but Bill Gaither?
Wow.
Now, Bill Gaither has a history with Billy Smiley, because Billy, before Whiteheart, Billy toured with the Gaither Trio. The Gaither Trio used to play arenas, and they'd take out almost a full orchestra. And Billy played flugelhorn and trombone, I think, with them. And a lot of the other Whiteheart guys, too, were in the Bill Gaither's band. And that's how they formed Whiteheart. They formed it out of that, meeting each other out of the Bill Gaither band. And so Bill Gaither comes in and he listens to a little bit of You're a Pagan. And our drummer, Philip Owens, was sitting there. And Bill said, how do you play those drums so fast? You know, and it was just surreal, you know, seeing people like that and hearing their reaction to what we did, you know. So anyway, so we didn't know whether Johnny was going to be able to come in and record with us or not. It was looking like this was never going to happen, you know. So we decided, well, we're going to do the song anyway. And so we recorded it, and Carrie sang the whole song all the way through. So we had that version of it kind of in the can. And so while we're mixing the album, we get a little note from the House of Cash. And it said, hey, Johnny's son, John Jr., is going to be having his 21st birthday party at this, you know, this saloon or whatever outside of Nashville. Going to have a big bash for his birthday, and we're just inviting all these different musicians to come and sit in and play a few songs. Why don't you guys bring your band down and sing a few songs? Johnny and June Cash are going to be there, and maybe it might be a chance to let them see what you do and talk to them or whatever. We were like, oh, wow, okay. So we did. We went to this place out in the boonies. I mean, it was nowhere out there. This honky tonk roadhouse, you know. And we walk in, and it's packed with people. And we saw like one of the guys from the Oak Ridge Boys, you know, the long beard.
Sure.
We saw him. We saw little Jimmy Dickens. You know, all these old school country people were there. And there's different artists that are singing up on the stage, and they had kind of a house band, you know, with fiddles and mandolins backing everybody up. So we walk in, and we were like a fish out of water. We looked like One Bad Pig. We looked a little different in that environment, but we came in and we saw Johnny and June kind of over there in the corner, whatever. And so we kind of talked with whoever was doing the stage and stuff. And they said, okay, yeah, you guys will go on maybe at 10 o'clock or whatever, do a couple songs. Well, okay, great. So then we noticed Johnny was not feeling too good, I think, or something. And he got up and he and his wife were making their way toward the door, kind of through the crowd. They were shaking hands and we heard someone say, hey, Johnny's leaving. We thought, oh no, Johnny's leaving. He's not going to get to see us play. We're not going to get to talk to him or meet him or whatever. And so we didn't know this, but Carrie, our lead singer, had written a letter to Johnny and had folded up and had it in his pocket, hoping he might be able to give it to Johnny. So as Johnny was leaving, Carrie kind of squeezed his way in there. They said, hey, Johnny, we're from the band One Bad Pig that wants you to sing Man in Black with us. He goes, oh yeah, kid. Yeah, nice to meet you. And he kind of kept moving on. And Carrie said, here, and gave him the letter,
Mm.
And so I don't know if Johnny put it in his pocket or one of his friends got it or whatever, but we thought, and then Johnny was vanished into the night, we thought, well, that's that,
Right.
this is not going to happen. Now we stayed at the bash and we got up on stage and we did our version of Man in Black with Carrie singing all the way through it. And then I think we also did Looney Tune, something just ridiculous and scary and funny. But the funniest part is before we played, we got up on stage and kind of setting up our stuff. And the backline band, the fiddle players and the accordion and the mandolin player, one of the guys looked at us and said, hey, you want us to sit in, back you up? And of course, and I said, oh, no, that's cool. We do our own thing. It's all right. In hindsight, I should have told him, sure, that'd be great.
Yeah, really.
And see what happens, as we kicked into our stuff, see them try to keep up or try to make sense of what we were doing, that would have been great, but a missed opportunity there. But so anyway, so the next day, Mark Maxwell at Merg gets a call from the House of Cash. And they said, Johnny wants to sing on the band's album, wants to sing on the song. Later today at 2 o'clock, he's going to be at such and such studio on Music Row. Have it set up and he'll sing on the song. He'll come in and do it. 2 o'clock, have it set up, And Mark Maxwell's like, great, okay. So then there's all this finagling going around. Billy Smiley is beside himself, and trying to get it all happening. And so apparently Johnny had read the letter that Carrie gave to him, and it touched his heart, and so he was going to come in and sing on the album. And so Johnny arrived at the studio. We were all there beforehand, prepping everything up, making sure everything's perfect, and the microphone set up, the headphones, and so Johnny shows up in this little car, just him driving himself, no entourage, no driver, nobody with him, just him. He comes in, of course, he's dressed all in black, and he greets us all. We laugh with him, talk with him and stuff. And then he said, yeah, I just came from the hospital. He said, my mother is there and she's basically on her deathbed. And we're with the different members of the family, we're taking turns being with her, And we were just like, we're kind of shocked. We go, man, dude, what are you doing here? He said, if you don't feel like you can do this today or you need to go and be with her, we understand. He says, oh, no. He says, I want to do this. He says, this is therapy for me. He said, this is what I need. Okay, great. So we all got around in a circle, held hands, and prayed for Johnny and for his mother, you know.
Mhm.
And it was powerful time, you know. So then we're all in the control room behind the glass, you know, and Johnny's out there in the studio with the headphones on, and he's listening to our version of his song for the first time. And actually, I wrote a lot of the music, some of the lyrics, but a lot of the music and the different Pig songs we did. So I was the one who rearranged his song.
Mhm.
You know, I have the arrangement credit or whatever on his song. So he's listening to it and he's kind of bobbing his head, you know, and stuff, and listening to it. He goes, "Hey, I like what you guys did to my song. Yeah, it's great. Great voice, you know." So we went through it and he did the vocal on it, you know, and it was amazing, you know. It was just like we couldn't believe it, you know. We're just like, oh my gosh, you know. And then at the end, we were done recording. I had an idea, and I said, hey, can we get one of those? Hello, I'm Johnny Cash. So can you give us one of those? Say it might be cool to have that dry just at the beginning of the song, and then
Sure.
the slams in, you know. And so he did it, and his
Wow.
voice was just perfect on it. It's just like wow. And so we kept that and used that, you know, as part of the song, as the intro to the song, basically. And oh my gosh, it was just amazing. And we took, you know, the record labels there, they took a nice picture of us with him. And then out in the parking lot, we did a picture of him squirting the band with silly string, you
Oh,
know,
right.
just some fun, you know. And then just like that, whoop, he drove off in his little car. He was gone. And that was that, you know. And we just couldn't believe it. It was surreal. It was like, did
Right.
that really just happen?
That's
You
cool.
know, man. So then the album gets mixed and mastered and put out there. And as I say, at the time, this was in 91 when this came out, 91. And at the time, there was in Christian music, there was actually a Christian rock radio chart, and there was even a Christian metal chart
Right. Right.
at the time. And and I think it was the Pure Rock Report was one of them that we used
Mm.
to read that would chart those, and it was the different Christian rock and metal shows, you know, basically that were going on in different cities, you know, on radio stations, and Man in Black was the first single, of course, and there was a moment in time there where it was #1 on the rock chart and #1 on the metal chart.
Wow.
That was awesome. They were just like woohoo, you know. And everybody who heard it just couldn't believe it. You know, the first time they heard the song, they were just like, I can't believe, you know, you actually got Johnny Cash. We couldn't believe it either, you
Right.
know.
That's great.
So it just happened. It was just
Yeah.
amazing, bizarre, you know. Now, of course, we had wished, you know, our label was it. The song was nominated for a Dove Award, you know, Metal Song of the Year. It didn't win. Again, Holy Soldier won, you know, but it was nominated, and Murr was pushing the GMA organization to have the Pig and Johnny sing it on the Dove Awards, but it was just too. It was too much for them.
Mm.
It was too radical, you know.
Right. Yeah.
It didn't want to do it. Even with Johnny Cash, they didn't want to do it. So we never got to perform the song live with Johnny. Murr did not do a video of us. You know, he didn't do a concept video or live video or anything like that of us and Johnny. So that was the last time that we saw or talked with Johnny. It was
Wow.
just a brief, you know, what seemed like a half hour, was probably an hour, but that brief hour, that one day, that was it, you know. And then for the rest of my life, that's one of the #1 questions I get asked, you know.
Awesome.
And it comes up on Facebook all the time,
Right.
all the time.
Awesome.
So it was amazing. And in I hope I'm not going too long here. Of course, you can
Yes.
cut
Okay. That's okay. Yeah.
Cut any of this stuff out.
Right.
In 92, I believe it was 91, 92. I still had the desire to try to make it as a Christian solo artist. I loved being with the Pig, but I still had this drive, especially when I would go up to Nashville and record with the Pig.
Sure.
It was an amazing experience up there. I mean, you'd run into DC Talk at the gas station, and you'd see Audio Adrenaline at the McDonald's. This is all true, by the way. I ran into Michael English at a grocery store. You'd go to church there, and the whole worship team are these Christian artists or these unbelievable studio musicians that have been on every album that you've ever loved in your life, And it was just, Nashville was just amazing to me as a huge Christian music fan,
Sure.
And so I told the guys in the Pig that I was going to be moving up there. I'd still be a part of the band, but I was going to live in Nashville. So through the second half of 91 and throughout 92, anytime the Pig had a concert, I would fly from Nashville to wherever it was, and the Pig would drive with the equipment, the merchandise, all that to there. We'd meet up there and do the concert, and then I would fly back to Nashville and they'd drive back to Austin, That's the way we did it for about a year and a half. And then I really felt it was a God thing, for that it was time for me to leave the band, as a full-time thing, not full-time, but as
Sure.
their guitar player or whatever, and really try to concentrate on building a new kind of solo image or whatever in Nashville and get a new solo thing going. So I did in late 92 or early 93. I left the band and started, kind of wondering what my own solo thing would be. Now, at the time, I really loved this artist named Peter Gabriel, who, of course, was on MTV a lot.
Right.
Was a popular, singer, but the way he sang and his style of music, it just kind of, it spoke to me somehow. And I thought, man, if this type of presentation could be done with the Spirit of God behind it, it could really be powerful, And so I kind of started learning how to sing like him and patternering. Is that a song? Patterned word. Patterned my music and way I would move and things kind of after what he was doing, taking that as inspiration, and started recording some demos and writing some songs, some original songs there in Nashville, and meeting different people. And I ended up getting a couple of song demo together. And the church I was going to, one of the elders there was a guy named Des Dickerson. Now, Des used to be the guitar player for Prince up in Minneapolis. But Des got saved, and he moved to Nashville and was now in the Christian music industry as an A&R guy at Star Song. And so I knew he was an A&R guy. And so I ended up giving him my little demo tape. And I'd given other people the tape and stuff, but he really saw something in it. He really thought, there's something here, And so he let me have access to the demo studio at Star Song to go in and do a couple of more songs. Did a couple more. And he eventually ended up presenting that to the A&R department, the other A&R guys in their weekly meeting. He played them my songs and what do you think of this, And the other people there didn't get it at all. They were like, I don't, this isn't happening for me. So Des had to come and tell me they don't get it. It's not happening at Star Song, And so it's funny because my wife and I, we thought, what should we do? And we thought, well, you know, when you're desperate and when you're spiritual, you'll try anything, you just, and so we thought, well, they marched around the walls of Jericho 7 times, so let's go down to Star Song Records at night when no one's there. And let's just walk around the building 7 times and pray. And I thought, well, can't hurt,
Sure.
So, so that's what we did. My wife and I were praying, and at nighttime, looking to see if anybody was still in the parking lot or anything, whatever, kind of, and walked around the building, Star Song's building, 7 times praying. So then shortly after that, I ended up doing a special music solo one Sunday morning at my church. And as I say, that's where Des went to church, Well, it just so happened that Sunday morning, and I didn't know he was going to be there. I didn't know he was there, but the president of Star Song, a guy named Stan Mosier,
Okay.
he was there at church that day. And the original song I did was called Bring Jesus to Me. And which is on my album that ended up coming out. And but did Bring Jesus to Me, and apparently, according to Des, Stan talked to Des right after church and said, Des, are you talking to this guy? Meaning, are you working with him? Are you talking with him at all? Do you know about him? And Des was like, I've been working with him for over a year, and because Stan wasn't there when Des presented, me to the A&R people,
Sure.
and in my music, Stan wasn't in on that meeting. So Stan didn't know the history of all that. All he knew was that to him, what I did worked.
Wow.
It worked for him. He was like, Des, get on it. Next thing I knew, in the mail, I had a Star Song contract. Again, 7 albums, that kind of thing.
Right. Yes.
But I hadn't signed it yet. I just had the contract sent to my house in the mail. And the day I got the contract, I got a call from Des, the guy who had been working with me there and who had loved my stuff for a couple of years, and he said, hey, let's go out to lunch, so that we need to talk. I said, okay. So I go out to lunch with Des, and he basically tells me, he says, hey, I know you got the contract from Star Song. He said, but I want you to know that I'm leaving the label. I said, you're leaving the label? Because this was the guy that was my only champion there, basically.
Sure.
I mean, besides Stan Mosier, but the other A&R people didn't get it, didn't get what I did. So I needed somebody there that really understood what I did and was going to push it and promote it, And so it was like I had a kick in the gut, he was leaving the label. It's like, But then he told me, he said, I'm starting my own label. So it's going to be called Absolute Records. And he said, the choice is up to you. He said, you can sign with Star Song if you want. I know that's what you've been praying about and that's what you've wanted. He said, but he said, I would love to have you as basically our flagship artist. In other words, our first artist we would put out on Absolute Records, So he said, pray about it, think about it, whatever. So talk about a tough decision.
Sure.
Here we had the Star Song contract, something I'd been basically trying for 2 years, and with all the ups and downs, and finally there it was. And now I was being told that the guy that had worked with me the whole time, that really believed in me, was not going to be there, So that was tough. But again, decided to go with Des. and Absolute Records. So I ended up signing with Dez, and it took a while, but we finally did get an album recorded, and there were some amazing people on that album also. David Zafiro, guitar player who was originally with Bloodgood, was on it. And one of the guys playing drums on the album is Chester Thompson.
Mm-hmm.
Used to play drums with Genesis all the time. When Phil Collins would come out from behind the drums sing, Chester was back there playing. And I had actually seen Genesis in concert when I lived in Austin in the 80s, and had seen Chester Thompson play. And now he was in the studio playing on music I wrote,
Oh.
It was incredible. And so anyway, so that album came out. It was called Touch the Ground. It came out in 1996.
Mm-hmm.
And most of the radio play I got was on what they called CHR, Contemporary Hit Radio, not adult contemporary radio, or more of the mellow and accepted Christian songs were. The ones that were a bit more radical were on CHR radio. And so there was a radio station in Nashville, Way FM, and they played Touch the Ground, the first single. They played it a lot, and it became at one point their number one song. They used to release their little top 10 or whatever in their little newsletter, and they had Touch the Ground, or there was number one. One of the cool things was the same time that the Touch the Ground single came out, another single had come out. The name of that single was called Jesus Freak, by a little band called DC Talk.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And it came out at the same time as Touch the Ground single. And so Way FM in Nashville used to have this little thing, which is they would play the top 5 requested songs of the day. They'd play them at 9:00 at night. Every night at 9:00, they would count down and play the top 5 requested songs of people calling in all day long requesting songs. They'd write them down and they'd play the top 5, And for a while there, every night at 9:00, we would listen, and Jesus Freak would be either number 1 or number 2, and Touch the Ground by Paul Ciupek would be either number 1 or number 2.
Cool.
So I was in some heady company there,
Sure.
especially in Nashville. All the industry people are listening to this, And I remember one time I ran into Toby Mac from DC Talk at a GMA event. I was kind of passing him in a hallway, and he looked at me and he went, "Touch the ground," like that. He sang, basically sang my song back to me. And so, oh man. So I thought that was the coolest thing in the world.
Sure.
And so when that album came out, I actually got to do several live dates opening up for John Schlitt of Petra. He was their lead singer, but he also did solo albums. And so he would go out and do solo dates just with tracks. He would sing the tracks. And so for a time there, I was John Schlitt's opening act, sound guy, merchandise guy, and road manager.
Wow.
And these were all fly-in dates,
Okay.
So from Nashville. So he and I would fly. We're the only ones, would fly together to wherever it was, and do a John Schlitt concert. And it was Paul Ciupek opening up. I did about maybe 4 songs, to open up, and then he did the rest of the night. And I ran his set, ran his little tapes. I tore down and put up his merchandise and sold his T-shirts and cassettes and all CDs. and was the road manager who got him his pizza late night at his hotel room, the
Oh.
whole deal. So yeah, it was wow, it was crazy. So anyway, but from Touch the Ground coming out, I was actually, for about a year and a half there, I was able to go full time with just doing that.
Wow.
I'd never done that before. As I said, with the pig, it was a part-time thing. We could
Sure.
never that be our only way of supporting ourselves. And my whole time in Nashville in the early 90s, I was always working odd jobs, pizza delivery, worked at a video store, worked at Kinko's, making copy,
Right.
office Max, just anything, to pay the bills.
Sure.
And so also during this time, like right before the Touch the Ground album came out, my third child was born. I have 3 kids, and our third child, her name is Joy, and she was born with cystic fibrosis.
Oh boy.
And she was diagnosed very early. We knew within 2 weeks of her being born that she had this genetic disease. And so it was just kind of a heartbreaking and shocking time to go through this, and learn about all these different treatments we would have to do with her at home and this and that. And it really was a time of questioning my faith and what all I believed. If I believed that God was truly a healing God, was he a loving God? And just if I was going to just put my whole faith in him despite what I saw as tragic circumstances. But and so when I went out on my concerts that I would do off the Touch the Ground album, I would get to talk about Joy and about my testimony of faith and about the circumstance. And I would be able to ask people, the congregations, the audiences, to pray for her.
Mm-hmm.
And so because of that, there became kind of a fellowship there, kind of a connection with people. And people would contact me, throughout the years, even, how's Joy doing? We pray for her every day and things like that. They're just amazing to me.
Wow.
By the way, Joy just turned 25.
Wow.
And she's married and she has a child, my only grandson, Thomas.
Wonderful.
Yeah, and she's doing awesome. She's doing great. She lives in Buffalo, New York.
Okay.
Up in the cold.
Wow.
So anyway, but she is doing great. And my other 2 kids, Evangeline and Clyde, are doing great also. So anyway, but I was able, with the amount of shows I was playing, to be able to make enough money to pay my bills.
Sure.
Just doing music for the first time in my life,
Right.
It was amazing. That's always the dream, to be able to do music full time,
Sure.
So in 96, 97, I was able to do that. But then it came time to do the second record. And Des and I had a disagreement over some different things, and it's something really small that turned into something big.
Mm.
And I had just signed a new management deal with a management company, and the label, Des and the label, was basically saying we're going to stop recording. I was working on the second album. We're going to stop that right now and wait till this issue gets resolved. And the management company had hired a lawyer on my behalf and said, well, we don't think that they can stop the recording of this album for this reason. And so Dez hires a lawyer, gets his lawyer, and so my lawyer and Dez's lawyer go back and forth, and it lasts a couple of years.
Wow.
And it was painful because we had already done even some pre-publicity on my second album, even though it wasn't all recorded yet. We had the title of it. We had given the title out to the regional booksellers and stuff, and the people that promote stuff like that. And so I had people asking me about it all the time. What's happening with this? And I said, oh, I'm trying to work things out, this, that. Anyway, and then, you know, especially if you sing at churches a lot, which I did with the Touch the Ground album, if you know, you want to be able to continue to go to those places and sing, but they're hesitant to bring you back unless you've got a new thing out. You know, hey, when your new album comes out, we'd love to have you back. But until then, you couldn't. And so my gigs started becoming fewer and fewer, and I had to go back to taking the odd jobs. You know, I still did a few gigs here and there on the weekend, but I had to go back, pizza delivery and all that. Yeah. And it's weird. After, you know, I had been, as I say, number one on Way FM radio in Nashville, and known as a Christian artist in the community there. I remember delivering a pizza to Steve Hindalong, the drummer for the choir.
Right. Yes.
One time, yeah. It was just a regular pizza thing he had ordered. It just happened to be him. He was like, "Oh, Paul, what are you doing?" I said, "I'm just, you know, trying to pay the bills, man. You know, hey, I understand, you know." And that happened a few times where I delivered pizza to Christian artists,
right?
You know, and that used to be a joke in Nashville. Is how do you get the Christian artist off your porch? You pay them for the pizza. And that, yeah, that was a joke, but I lived that. I lived that joke.
Oh boy.
Know? So anyway, finally, after a couple of years, the relationship had soured so much between me and the record company that my management company's goal at that time was just to get me out of the deal.
Sure.
You know, by any means necessary. And so I was able to get out of the deal. Money had to exchange hands for that to happen. I had to pay some money, and I had to give up my songwriting credits. You know, all future royalties for songwriting on everything on Touch the Ground.
Right. Yeah.
That I'd written, and all the songs that I had written that were going to be on the second album.
Oh boy.
Because the idea was if I took those songs to another label and did them, the first label wanted to receive monies for that.
Sure.
You know? So I ended up never using those songs again. You know, I didn't do anything with them. I didn't complete writing them or recording them or anything. But the songs that are on Touch the Ground, you know, I mean, there's some powerful stuff on there. And one of the songs that was released to adult contemporary radio, and some stations played it, but others, the sound of it, the sound of my voice and the instrumentation, they weren't quite ready to go there yet. It was a bit too contemporary sounding, but it was called Bring Jesus to Me.
Right. Yeah.
It was a ballad, you know. And that's an incredible song. And I wrote it, but if Amy Grant did it today, I wouldn't get a penny from it.
Oh boy.
Yeah, that's the sad news. So anyway, but those kind of things happen, you know. So after that happened in Nashville, God started really turning my heart toward worship. And instead of signing a new deal and trying to go on with a career Christian artist wise, I was coming more involved with the different worship teams in Nashville at different churches. And then I got a call from this church that I grew up in Vallejo, California, a small American Baptist church, and they needed a worship leader and a youth leader combined, you know. And my mom and dad still lived in Vallejo and still went to that church.
Wow.
And so my mom was telling me about this opportunity, and so I was thinking, oh no, this was in the year 2000. I spent almost the whole 90s in Nashville.
Right.
And I thought, oh my gosh, do I kind of give up on the Nashville dream and start, you know, doing this worship leading thing, you know, at a church on staff, you know, and through prayer and, you know, just trying to sort things out with my family and everything, we ended up in the fall of 2000 moving out to Vallejo, California, where I grew up, and ministering in a small church there. And I was the worship leader and the youth director.
Mm.
And I'd never been a youth director before. Now, I'd been in youth groups at different times in my life, you know, of course. But and what I quickly found out was that I felt like there was definitely an anointing there, a gifting there to do worship leading.
Sure.
It was easy for me. It came easy. It worked real well. And, you know, it was just like leading a band. And I'd led bands all my life
Sure.
and been on platform ministry all my life. And so it worked great. But the youth directing thing was real work.
Yes, definitely.
That was tough. I think I did a good job at it, but it was just because God gave me grace for it, but not necessarily anointing or
Right.
gift,
Yeah.
just some grace. And so after a while, after, you know, a few years there, I thought, man, I would really love to do worship leading full time. You know, that wasn't going to happen at this church because it was small. They couldn't afford
Sure.
to pay a full time music guy, you know. So I ended up coming back. I'm going in circles here. I ended up coming back to Austin.
Okay.
Because a friend of mine named Bill Vanderbush was pastoring a church there. He was an old time Pig fan from way back, you know, and he had heard that I was leading worship. And he said, man, we need a full time worship leader. Would you like to come to Austin and be my full time worship leader at my church? It's like, oh boy, another big move, you know. So this was in 2004. We packed up and we moved to Austin, back to Austin, basically. And I led worship at his church and ended up leading at a few different churches, one in Beaumont. And then I ended up, I believe it was it 2007? Yeah, I think it was 2007. I took a worship leading position in Killeen, Texas. That's where Fort Hood is, the largest army base in the U.S. And I was their full-time worship leader, and I was there at that church for 9 years, which is a long time for a worship leader, because I had read back at the time that the average stay of a worship leader at a church was 2 years.
Okay.
That was average, you know, and that had kind of played out in my experience, you know, up until that time. And it's interesting because what I found with worship leading at a church and being on staff there, this is especially the case with non-denominational churches or spirit-led churches, is that they seem to always be looking or wanting or praying for a fresh move of God, a new anointing. they'll use that type of language,
Sure.
but they want kind of something new, something fresh. They want God to do a new thing in their church. And often that can be a really good thing, a great thing to pray for, but that often manifests itself in them looking for a new worship leader or style to come in, a new flavor to kind of bring that newness. Often it's the worship leader that gets let go because of that, and someone else is brought in to try to make this new vision happen or this new move of God. And so I think that's a lot of the reason, and I definitely experienced that. It's a lot of reason why worship leaders tend to move on from churches. But in Killeen, it wasn't that way. I was at a place called Lifeway Christian Fellowship. As I say, I was there for 9 years,
Wow.
and it was great. It was wonderful. And Killeen was close enough to Austin that every once in a while I'd be able to see the Austin guys, the One Bad Pig guys, and once in a blue moon, we would do like a reunion gig,
Oh,
get
awesome.
back together again and play just for fun and all that. So in 2016, I believe it was, One Bad Pig, we decided to go ahead and get together and do a new studio album, not signed to a label, just crowdfunded through Kickstarter. And we hadn't done the last studio album we did was Ice Cream Sunday,
Right.
91. There was a couple live albums that came out and a best of album, things like that, but not another all original studio record. So 91 to 2016, that's 25 years.
Right.
That's a long gap, but we knew we still had some fans out there, and we thought we could probably raise the money to go into the studio and do it. So we decided to go ahead and do it just as a one-off reunion thing. So we did that in 2016, and the Kickstarter campaign was successful, and we even did a stretch goal of putting it on vinyl, and we reached that. And so we recorded that album. It was called Love You to Death. And so off that, we played, of course, a reunion concert in Austin. We got invited to play at Audio Feed concert, which is in Illinois. Went up there and played. And then we thought we were kind of done for a while. But the next year, 2017, we were invited by, believe it or not, a Christian metal festival in Sweden.
Wow.
And so we thought, hey, Sweden, we can't say no to this. So we got together and went over to Sweden in 2017 and played a concert there. That was incredible and very surreal, and so that's the last time that the Pig has played. It was 2016. And in 2017, my wife and I, we had always loved Disney World in Florida, and we always would come for anniversaries and for the holidays and stuff. I'm a Disney freak, love Disney. And so we were always planning our next vacation there. And I said to her one time, I said, wouldn't it be wild if we moved to Orlando and Disney was in our backyard?
Sure.
And she was like, yeah, whatever. But that became kind of a little joke for a while. And then it was like, well, we're not getting any younger. And it's like, how could we make this happen? And so we were able to find a way to make it happen. And as after 9 years at Lifeway Fellowship, I told them, hey, we're moving to Orlando, and I was leaving, And so I didn't get fired from that church. That was awesome, because it had happened before, So they really wanted me to stay, but I was leaving of our own decision, And so we moved to Orlando about 6.5 years ago, and I've been doing, odd jobs here and there. My latest job, which hopefully I'll have for a while now, I've been there almost 4 years, is at Magic Candle Company.
Okay.
And during the day, Monday through Friday, during the day, I'm pouring wax. I'm making candles, Yeah, I never thought I'd do that, but
There you go.
the job was open. It's a steady job. It gave me my nights and weekends free, which is wonderful. So a few years back, I started getting into the Orlando music scene because it's a tourist town. There's tons of places where they have live music. So they'll
Sure.
have a guy playing acoustic guitar and singing classic rock songs, or bands or duos or whatever. And so I made a little video of myself doing that type of thing. And now I'm doing gigs all over Orlando. And this year I've got on the books right now, I think I've got around 60 gigs booked already for this year. There's more that are coming along. By the end of the year, I'll probably do around 100 dates. And that's my side hustle. That's my part-time gig.
Cool.
And that's more gigs than I ever did with the Paul Ciupek Band or with One Bad Pig or anything. I'm more busy just doing the thing. I play acoustic guitar and I sing classic rock stuff, a lot of 80s stuff, which I love, And sometimes I do a duo thing where I'm singing and playing, and a friend of mine plays the cello and he sings background vocals, and we do a duo that way. Still the same music, the classic pop and rock stuff. So anyway, so I'm loving that. I'm enjoying that. And that's kind of where I'm at. It's funny, there's this new Christian metal festival that has started up in Ohio called Immortal Fest. They had their first one last year.
Right.
And they had a lot of classic Christian metal bands play, like Saint and Sacred Warrior, White Cross, and Barren Cross. And so they're doing it again this year. In fact, they're doing a couple of them. One of them is in July, and they invited One Bad Pig.
Awesome.
To reunite and do a concert there. So after I guess what will be a 7-year break in July, the Pig is playing. We're all getting together in Ohio, Versailles, Ohio. It's called the BMI Event Center.
Okay.
BMI Event Center in Versailles, Ohio. It's the weekend of July, like 21st, 22nd, right in there, couple nights. We're going to be there. Deliverance is going to play, Disciple, and then some newer bands like Human Code and Theocracy and Chaotic Resemblance and Deny the Fallen. And so anyway, it's going to be an amazing, kind of Christian metal fest. So if anybody's ever wanted to see One Bad Pig live and it's on your bucket list, you've never got to do it,
Yeah.
come see us this July in Ohio. It'll be
Awesome.
a classic Pig show. We're going to smash guitars and jump into ice cream sundaes and do the whole deal. Yep, it'll be wild.
Awesome.
So, yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. So how can we contact you?
Well, how can you contact me? I would say the best way is through Facebook.
Okay.
I've never been on a lot of social media platforms. I'm not that handy with a computer,
Sure.
And so Facebook has been kind of my go-to. I'm not on Twitter, Instagram, or TikTok or anything. So if people can contact me on Facebook. The problem is I've run into my friend limit, which
Okay.
is
Yeah.
5,000. You know, once
Right.
you reach
Yeah. Yes.
5,000,
Exactly.
they won't let you put any more. I could do
Right.
an artist page or something. Now, One Bad Pig, there is an artist page for that on Facebook.
Okay. Cool. All right.
But even if you're not one of my friends on Facebook, you can still Facebook message me,
Sure.
and it'll just alert me, and it'll say, do you allow this person to talk with you or whatever? And I always
Right.
do, of course.
Yes.
So you can
Definitely.
still get a message to me if you need to through that Facebook Messenger. That'd be the best way, I guess.
Cool. 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 So yeah. Do you have any advice for other musicians?
Advice. Oh,
Yes.
and wow. Oh boy. Well, it's interesting because things are so different now
Sure.
with music and with, if you will, the music business, than they were when I was starting out. So
Right.
different. It's
It
just a
is. It
completely
is.
different world. But I guess, there's a verse in the Bible that says that a man's gift will make room for him.
Mhm.
Basically, I interpret that to mean, uh, if you've got it, if you've got something, other people are gonna hear about it and notice it. And so it's easy these days to be able to just write a song and put it on YouTube
Right. Exactly.
or any type of social media platform. It's easy to do that. And
Yes.
if there's anything there, if there's some quality, if there's some uniqueness, or if there's a message in the song that resonates with other people, if there's something about it that really speaks to people, people will respond to
Definitely.
it. As a musician, you may not make $1 million. You may not tour the world. You may not ever even get signed to a label. There's a lot less labels these days anyway. But you may not ever get recorded product distributed all around. But music in itself is such a joyful thing. Even in the Bible, you look at in the Old Testament how Saul used to call for David to play for him
Yeah.
because it was healing. The music itself soothed his mind, they said. And music has that quality. It's an emotional medium, and it can cause an emotional response. And as Christian musicians, we have a responsibility then. We are, in a sense, playing with people's emotions because we're playing music, whether that's punk and we're getting them riled up, or whether that's a beautiful ballad and it's in a minor key and we're bringing a tear to somebody. Just that music opens up a certain part of the heart. Now, what are you going to deposit in there now that you've opened it up? Are you going to deposit a message of truth and of encouragement, of joy and of hope? Are you going to point them to Jesus? Or are you just, going to sing about something else, which is fine. You can do whatever you want to. But the amazing thing is that music has a unique power to open up the heart. It opens up the heart, and people give you access almost to themselves when you give them a song. And so it's powerful and it's joyful. And if you love music, it can be a lifelong pursuit. There are
Sure.
people in their 70s and their 80s that are creating music that are still singing or playing in some way, whether it's for thousands or whether it's for their own enjoyment. So it's a wonderful thing to get involved in. And also being able to collaborate with people. I would say, yes, you can stay in your own room and become proficient as a musician and just kind of put things out on the internet by yourself and all that. But in the same way, the Bible talks about iron sharpening iron.
Sure.
Musicians working with other musicians,
Yep.
there's a uniqueness there, and there's a growth that can happen there. And then sometimes there's a magic. It's like, oh my gosh, you see what we did together? Oh, we created this new thing, or we wrote this new song, or you brought something to my song that I never would have thought of,
Right.
And so working with other like-minded people in music can just be a great thing. And also that person can spur you on when you get depressed, because a lot of times in music things don't go the way that you planned, or the amount of people showing up to your gig was not the amount that you hoped for.
Right.
See Christian promoters about that. And
Yeah, really.
yeah. And so it's easy to be discouraged, when things don't go, like in my mind, when I see things happening musically, or where I see in my mind an audience enjoying what I'm doing, I'm picturing a perfect scenario. But
Sure.
then in life, when I actually do it, oftentimes it's not what I pictured.
Right.
There are flaws in it. Why? Because it's actual reality. It's
Sure.
human beings. You're dealing with all kinds of things. So a musician can get discouraged. So you also need that collaboration, that cooperation with other people, other like-minded people that can step in and say, hey man, come on, let's work on this, or forget about that. That didn't go great, but this next thing is going to be really cool. And let's work together to make it happen. So I would say main advice is just to keep going, keep creating, and that your gift will find some type of platform. Someone out there will notice if there's any worth to it at all, or any talent to it at all, and just take pleasure in that. Take pleasure in the fact that you're able to create something. That's one of the most amazing things, is that God is a creator, and he's made us with the ability to create.
Yeah.
That's what we do. We are creators. We can actually make things, and so it's just, and music is just a great way of demonstrating that. So anyway, I'm not the greatest music educator in the world, so I don't know if my advice is worth anything, but there you go.
Yeah. Thank you, Paul. Thank you.
Sure, Steve.
Yes. And thank you for coming on. It was my pleasure.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much for the opportunity. God bless you, and God bless your audience.
Yes. And any last words?
Last words.
Yes.
Oh man. If don't go swimming in any of the lakes in Florida.
Okay. Right. Yeah. Get the alligators there.
Don't do it. There are gators everywhere.
Yeah, definitely. All right.
All right, Stephen. God bless you, man. Thank you.
You too. Thank you so much. And if we're in the Florida area, we'll make sure to see you play.
Definitely. That would be awesome.
That'd be awesome. Okay. All right. God bless you, and good night.
Good night, Stephen.